Imagine a machine, right? A machine that knows you're going to quit your job maybe like 6 months before you even update your resume.
Oh, wow.
Right. And it knows like the exact percentage chance that your specific role will be totally obsolete in 3 years.
Yeah.
And it's already, secretly budgeting to replace you with someone who has a completely different skill set.
Which is terrifying, but yeah.
It is. But this machine exists in almost every major corporation. And it operates completely in the background because, I mean, we usually just think of getting a job as dropping off an application, maybe tossing a coin into a wishing well, and hoping the hiring manager likes our font choice on the resume.
Yeah, just hoping for the best.
Exactly. But behind the curtain, there is this staggering level of like statistical forecasting, behavioral psychology, and even legal engineering happening long before you ever see a job posting.
It's essentially the invisible architecture of the working world. I mean, when you log into work today, the fact that your desk, your title, and your specific list of daily tasks even exist, well, that's the result of a massive multi-year strategic calculation.
And unlocking that calculation is our mission today. So welcome to the deep dive. We have a really fascinating stack of academic human resources materials in front of us today, covering the real mechanics of human resource planning, job analysis, and recruitment.
Lots of heavy-hitting stuff.
Oh, for sure. We are going to decode the macro-level matrices that dictate your career path.
So, okay, let's unpack this. To understand how a company decides to hire you, we kind of have to look at the massive geopolitical and economic pressures that are forcing their hand in the first place.
Right. So the overarching system here is called human resource planning, or HRP for short. And at its core, HRP is an organization's master strategy for acquiring, utilizing, developing, and you're retaining people.
The academic texts point out that HRP has evolved from this basic administrative task into an urgent, top-level boardroom priority. The days of executive fiat where a boss could simply just hire 50 people on a whim and then fire them the next month if sales dipped. Those days are just over.
Completely over. And the sources are really clear on why that shift happened, actually. It basically comes down to friction. Governments have implemented strict legislative controls regarding working hours, affirmative action, and particularly layoffs. So you can't just shed your workforce cheaply anymore.
No, absolutely not.
The financial and legal penalties for a mass closure, they essentially force companies to look years into the future.
Exactly. And those legal constraints are colliding with some very volatile macro-level pressures right now. I'd say the most obvious one is just rapid technological change.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Production technologies are fundamentally altering job contents almost overnight. So a company might suddenly find themselves with, 200 employees whose skills are completely redundant while simultaneously facing this acute shortage of the advanced technical skills they actually need to survive.
Which is wild, right? You see this paradox all the time in the labor market. General unemployment might be rising across the country, but a specific tech sector will be screaming that they can't find enough qualified engineers.
Exactly, yeah. And then you add in demographic shifts, like this massive wave of older employees retiring and just taking decades of institutional knowledge out the door with them. And the pressure on HR is just immense.
Yeah, that brain drain is real.
It is. Plus, companies don't operate in a vacuum, right? The readings really highlight the impact of pressure groups.
Oh, right, the pressure groups.
Yeah, they complicate the chessboard significantly. I mean, a multinational corporation can't just drop a brand new factory into a town and import all their own workers.
Right, the locals wouldn't stand for it.
No, local politicians and labor unions will apply intense pressure. Demanding that a certain percentage of jobs are reserved for the locals or insisting on rigid internal promotion tracks. So management is constantly balancing what is mathematically efficient with what is politically and socially viable.
It actually really reminds me of managing a professional sports franchise.
Oh, that's a good comparison.
Well, you can't just draft players the day before the season starts, right? A general manager has to look at the aging veterans who are about to retire. They have to scout the upcoming rookies in the college system, manage a strict salary cap, and anticipate any new rule changes the league might implement next year. It's this continuous multi-year game.
That's a perfect analogy, actually. Yeah.
But, okay, here's where I want to push back on the texts a bit.
Okay, let's hear it.
Mapping out these rigid 5-year HR plans across national, sectoral, and unit levels, it just feels a bit too slow.
Too slow.
Yeah, I mean, a modern tech company might pivot its entire product line in 6 months. Does long-term HRP actually survive contact with reality when businesses move that fast?
Well, see, the speed of modern business is precisely why companies cannot rely on gut feelings or short-term reactions anymore.
Interesting.
Yeah, if a company pivots its product line, the lead time to select, train, and deploy employees with completely new skills is often way longer than the product development cycle itself.
Oh, I see.
So they have to scientifically predict those needs before the pivot even happens. And that transition from the broader why of HRP into the how, that takes us directly into human resource forecasting.
Corporate fortune telling.
Basically, yeah.
This is where the math gets heavily involved. When an organization asks, who do we need next year right now? They start with demand forecasting. And they use these quantitative models to try and predict the future.
Right, and the most foundational quantitative model is trend analysis. Basically, a company isolates a key business factor, let's say, gross sales or value added, which is just the selling price minus the cost of material.
Okay, keep it simple.
Exactly. So they plot a historical line of that factor against the number of employees they had at the time. This generates a labor productivity ratio. So if historical data shows that it takes, say, one employee to generate $100,000 in sales, and next year's corporate goal is $10 million in sales, the math simply dictates a baseline demand for 100 employees.
But wait, relying on a single variable like past sales feels incredibly fragile. If interest rates spike or a supply chain collapses, that historical ratio is basically useless, right?
Which is exactly why larger organizations use multiple predictive modeling. They don't just look at their own sales, they feed massive external variables into the matrix.
Like what kind of variables?
Well, they analyze the gross national product, projected disposable income in their target demographics, and yeah, those very interest rates you just mentioned.
Oh, wow, so it's a huge economic model.
Exactly. By weighing multiple economic indicators, the algorithm produces a much more resilient forecast of future employment levels.
Even with all that math, though, human behavior is notoriously unpredictable. And the texts introduce qualitative approaches to kind of balance the algorithms, specifically highlighting something called the Delphi technique.
Ah, yes, the Delphi technique.
I found the mechanics of this so fascinating because it's essentially designed to completely neutralize office politics.
Yeah, because office politics and groupthink usually destroy accurate forecasting. I mean, if you put 10 executives in a room to predict next year's staffing needs, the loudest person, which is usually the highest ranking boss, just dominates the conversation.
Right, and everyone else just nods along to protect their jobs.
Exactly. The Delphi technique solves this by utilizing anonymity. You pre-select a group of experts, and you solicit their forecasts through a blind survey.
So no one knows who said what.
Precisely. HR compiles those initial anonymous predictions, calculates the median, and then sends a summary back to the whole group.
Okay.
So if one expert predicted a need for 50 engineers and another predicted 0, they are asked to anonymously justify their extreme outlier positions.
Wow, so they have to defend it without revealing who they are.
Right. And this process iterates several times. It forces the group to abandon their egos and adjust their logic based on the anonymous feedback until a consensus emerges. It's incredibly effective when dynamic tech changes disrupt a market and historical data is just completely unreliable.
Okay, so demand forecasting tells us how many people we need. The immediate next step is supply forecasting, which asks, where are these people actually going to come from? And the golden rule here seems to be look inward first.
Always. Hiring externally is expensive, it's time-consuming, and it's risky. Internal supply is always the preferred starting point. Organizations build highly detailed profiles of their current workforce to see who can move around.
Right.
They use staffing tables, which are basically these visual maps of current jobs and the specific people sitting in them, and then they overlay that with replacement charts.
And replacement charts are what? Exactly.
It's a system identifying the immediate backups for critical roles, just in case someone unexpectedly quits or gets promoted.
Got it. I noticed they also rely heavily on skill inventories in the reading. And this isn't just a list of college degrees, right? It's like a searchable database of every language an employee speaks, specific software certifications they hold, past projects they've contributed to.
Yep, it's very comprehensive.
So when a weird new contract lands, HR queries the skill inventory to see if they already have, like a sleeper agent in accounting who speaks fluent Mandarin and knows Python, before they go spend $50,000 on an external recruiter.
Exactly. That internal visibility is critical, and it feeds directly into the most complex tool in supply forecasting, which is Markov analysis.
Okay, this is the wildest concept in the reading for me. So Markov analysis tracks the historical percentage of employees moving from one specific job to another over time, creating this composite matrix of supply.
Matrix is the right word for it, yeah.
I picture it kind of like tracking water through a massive plumbing system. Like if you pour 100 junior analysts into PBI today, the Markov matrix tells you historically that in 12 months, 10% will flow up into the senior analyst pipe, 5% will transfer laterally to marketing, and 20% will just leak out of the system entirely through resignations.
The plumbing analogy works really well because it emphasizes flow. Markov analysis calculates the continuous influx and outflow.
Right.
When a company knows the exact statistical probabilities of promotions, lateral transfers, and turnover for every single role, they can project exactly where the talent shortages will appear in their internal pipeline, literally years in advance.
But zooming out for a second, doesn't reducing your entire workforce to a statistical probability, like literally a percentage flowing through a pipe, doesn't that strip away the human element?
Right.
It feels like we're losing sight of the actual individuals doing the work.
This raises an important question, and honestly, it highlights a critical failure point for a lot of organizations. Tracking percentages and calculating headcounts is entirely useless if you don't understand the physical and psychological reality of the work those people are actually doing.
Yeah.
You cannot just plug a human being into a matrix based on a vague job title. This requires us to cross the bridge from abstract planning into concrete reality, which brings us directly to job analysis.
Moving from the fortune-telling to the dissection table.
Exactly.
The materials define job analysis as the process of gathering objective data about the job itself, completely independent of the person currently holding it. Like, you are breaking the role down to its atomic level.
Yeah, you're looking at the specific tasks, the frequency of those duties, and the complexity. But it goes way beyond a simple to-do list. Job analysis investigates the physical environment, too.
Like what kind of stuff?
Well, does the role require standing in extreme temperatures? Are there hazardous materials involved? It documents the necessary tools, the required protective gear, and the exact chain of supervision. And from that raw data, HR extracts the required KSA's knowledge, skills, and abilities.
Okay, this is where we have to clarify two terms that people constantly use interchangeably, but are actually very, very different. The job description and the job specification.
Yes, the distinction is vital here. A job description is a factual statement about the work itself. It outlines what is to be done, how it is executed, and why it matters to the company.
Okay.
A job specification, on the other hand, is entirely about the human being required to do the work. It lists the minimum acceptable education, the physical aptitudes, and the specific experience necessary to actually perform the duties outlined in that description.
And the readings emphasize that this isn't just bureaucratic paperwork. Job analysis is the foundational bedrock for an organization's legal defense.
It is absolutely their frontline defense against unfair discrimination. Think about it. Without a rigorous, objective analysis of what a job actually requires, a manager's hiring standards could be completely arbitrary.
Right.
And worse, those unwritten standards could be quietly designed to exclude specific demographics from the workplace. If an applicant sues a company for discrimination, claiming they were unfairly rejected, the organization must legally prove that their hiring criteria are strictly job-related.
So the analysis is the proof.
Exactly. The documented job analysis is the only thing that proves those criteria are legitimate business necessities.
This mechanism is also at the very heart of the comparable worth controversy in the texts, because the push for equal pay isn't just about men and women doing the exact same job. It's about individuals performing different jobs that require comparable levels of knowledge and responsibility.
Right.
The text highlights a pretty stark historical reality. Women working in fields comparable to male-dominated fields have historically earned roughly 65% of what those men earn.
And closing that 65% gap mathematically requires objective scoring. Let's say a male-dominated machine maintenance role and a female-dominated administrative management role looked totally different on the surface. How do you prove they deserve the same salary?
You use job analysis.
Exactly. Analysts break both jobs down and score them based on things like mental fatigue, required problem-solving skills, and financial responsibility. If the objective scores match, the jobs are comparable in worth, which legally mandates equitable compensation regardless of the different titles.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting for me. How does an analyst actually extract this atomic level data today? I immediately pictured the old scientific management days like Frederick Taylor and Frank Gilbreth standing on a factory floor with clipboards and stopwatches, just treating humans like cogs in a machine.
Well, industrial engineering used to operate exactly like that. They utilized time and motion studies, focusing entirely on maximum physical efficiency. They even introduced CAD computer-aided design to model human movements in the workspace mathematically. But modeling a human being like a robotic arm creates catastrophic behavioral side effects.
Right, because if you optimize a job so perfectly that it becomes a repetitive 5-second loop of motion, you completely strip the soul out of the work. Like, sure, you get maximum efficiency,
Right.
but you induce massive psychological boredom.
And that boredom is incredibly expensive. The old engineering approach completely ignored the behavioral aspects of the worker. Mind-numbing specialization led directly to a crisis of poor quality control, soaring absenteeism, extreme stress, and turnover.
Makes sense.
Companies realized pretty quickly that perfectly engineering the mechanics of a job was useless if the employee just quit out of despair after 3 weeks.
So when a job analysis reveals that a role is just totally soul-crushing, how does the system fix it?
Well, this triggered the evolution from job engineering to job design. Job design actively re-engineers the work to reduce stress and enhance internal motivation. And the sources outline 3 specific structural solutions for this: job rotation, job enlargement, and job enrichment.
Let me try to map these out. So imagine you work at a busy local coffee shop.
Okay, I'm with you.
Job rotation would be the manager moving you from the cash register on Monday to the espresso machine on Tuesday, and then maybe the drive-thru window on Wednesday.
That accurately represents rotation. It provides relief from immediate monotony and broadens your baseline knowledge of the operation. However, if you're an employee seeking a deep intellectual challenge, simply moving horizontally between tasks of identical complexity will eventually leave you just as frustrated.
Okay, so then we try job enlargement.
Mm-hmm.
In the coffee shop, that would be my boss telling me that I now have to sweep the floors, wipe the tables, and restock the inventory on top of my usual register duties. So it's a horizontal expansion. I have a wider variety of tasks, but they're all essentially at the same skill level.
Right.
Expanding the scope of the job can occasionally reduce boredom, but human psychology is tricky. Research consistently shows that simply giving someone more of the same mundane work does not act as a long-term motivator. Which brings us to the most effective and definitely the most difficult solution: job enrichment.
So job enrichment at the coffee shop would mean the owner gives me a budget, the authority to invent my own seasonal latte, and the autonomy to design the marketing campaign for it. I'm not just doing more tasks. I'm making higher-level decisions.
I love that analogy. That vertical expansion is the core of job enrichment. It is heavily influenced by Hertzberg's theory of motivation. You increase what organizational psychologists call job depth.
Job depth, okay.
Yeah, you're handing the employee genuine autonomy, the opportunity to utilize advanced skills, and control over their own outcomes. When people feel a profound sense of personal responsibility and achievement, the quality of their output skyrockets. It completely reframes how we look at an organizational chart. I mean, we've mapped out the macro pressures, we've used predictive modeling to forecast the headcount, analyzed the legal boundaries of the work itself, and deliberately designed an enriched job that won't just burn the human out.
And once all that invisible architecture is finally in place, the trap is set. Now, the organization is ready to actually pull people into the matrix. This is the final stage detailed in our sources: recruitment.
We finally arrive at the point where the applicant actually sees a job posting.
Yes. Recruitment is the climax of this entire preparatory phase. It's defined as the art of discovering and procuring applicants. But the texts make a very deliberate distinction here. Recruitment is strictly a positive action.
Positive meaning.
Yeah.
Like it's about invitation.
Yes, exactly. Selection, which is the interview phase that happens later, is fundamentally a negative action because its primary function is to reject people and filter the pool down to one.
Oh, that makes sense.
But recruitment, however, is about stimulation. The goal is to cast a strategic net and pull in a massive inventory of highly eligible persons.
And building that inventory relies on deeper structural forces than just, posting a clever ad on a job board. The materials highlight several specific influencing factors that determine a company's gravitational pull.
Oh, definitely. Geographical conditions play a massive hidden role. An organization located in a thriving, expensive tech hub utilizes a completely different recruitment strategy than a manufacturing plant in a rural area.
Naturally.
Past recruiting successes build momentum in the market, too. A company's internal promotion policies act as a powerful magnet. I mean, ambitious candidates will only apply if they see a documented history of upward mobility.
Right. They want to see a future.
And ultimately, the compensation and benefits packages, which, remember, are derived directly from that meticulous job analysis and comparable worth scoring we discussed, those dictate the caliber of the talent pool.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener? The next time you're scrolling through a career website and you click Apply, just remember that you are not initiating a simple linear interaction. You are interacting with the very tip of a heavily researched iceberg. You're stepping into a complex matrix of supply forecasting, legislative compliance, and behavioral psychology that has been running in the background for years.
What's fascinating here is how these academic theories translate into sheer survival for an organization. The ultimate goal of all this planning, from the Markov matrices tracking employee movement to the deliberate enrichment of daily tasks, is to turn the chaotic, unpredictable labor market into a controlled, strategic advantage.
It really makes you look at your own desk a little differently, doesn't it? Well, thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the hidden architecture of human resources. We've traveled from macro-level demographic shifts to the atomic analysis of your daily routine.
It's been a journey.
But before we log off, I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over. Think about your own job right now. Which specific box of your company's Markov's matrix do you currently fill? And as artificial intelligence begins to automate the cognitive tasks that define our daily routines, how will your organization have to completely rewrite their job analysis playbooks? If a machine takes over the repetitive parts of your day, will your role be rotated, enlarged, enriched? Or will the matrix predict that your job shouldn't exist at all? Keep questioning the systems around you. We'll see you on the next deep dive.